Mostly what you want to do with exercise is situate your body in space and make sure that well, what you're always trying to do is articulate the reality of your body's presence, no matter what the angle. So this sort of notion of Aldous Huxley being followed around by Alexander, the developer of the Alexander technique, showing him, as he lifts up garbage, as he bends over the sink, as he brushes his teeth. What is the motor mechanics, the hydraulics of that action? And so what you want to do in terms of time and space is register yourself, not just as a cerebral entity, but through your body, which means, awareness of left and right. Your right brain goes to your left body and your left brain to your right body, and that becomes an important, in the corpus callosum, exchanging information from right to left brain, the right brain being the visual brain, the conceptual brain, the one that you want to impress with an ideation of physical form, of expectation, of the imaging of healing the spine, translating. So I've been finding that being on, listening to music from, I never thought I'd ever listening to opera, but I've got 200 CDs and I keep trying to alter them so that I get radically different CDs one to the next, and stuff that I like and so on. So this innervation that comes from music, the exploration of time and space with no, whether you're lying on a bed or whatever, trying to establish the midpoint between left and right, because it's a bizarre feeling to feel that. And then with the corpus callosum radiating into left and right, where it radiates in terms of how the mind orchestrates, whether it's just in this cognitive box, and looking through that in terms of the parallax of the frontal cortex, in terms of how that valuation has taken place, so that it becomes, preemptive in terms of what it's not interested in, and the myelination in terms of axons and dendrites and brain connections and so on. The insulation thickens, the speed limit in the brain for different places is established, so the whole buzz of the brain gets taken up from this sort of firing and wiring. Thanks. Kitty. Okay, so that's the essence really of the universe. You've got dark matter and dark flow and dark energy. So dark energy translating into dark matter through dark flow. And the resolution of the representation, like let's say a Willy Loman syndrome, where you feel like, a very small person. Existentially, that's what's so beautiful about Death of a Salesman and about a lot of the theater of the absurd stuff, is you get this barrenness, this wasteland in the middle of,
the mind of, you know, somebody who has to be captivated by being ordinary just to keep their head above water. The incisiveness with which one attaches, you know, whether it's arithmetical or metaphorical, is determined by one's mindset. And the obligation of the body, so the argument mind or brain, the mind controls the brain, so that hysteria in the mind materializes in the brain and is carried out in its functionality by the brain. I'm standing in a very narrow space here. Maybe if I move this. So when it comes to being neurologically attached to your appendages and your body and trying to, you know, at times relax, unplug, that's the ambition of meditation. I don't see it as, you know, I see it as a place of clearing the stage so that, you know, we are entangled in the plots of our lives. The coherence of our day-to-day depends on who we are, where we go to work, who we associate with, who we dissociate from, and the general trajectory of a life caught in the parameters of, you know, not only topography in a literal sense, but in a metaphorical sense. And that restrictiveness becomes the essence of so much of what we despair about, whether it be in books or song or whatever. And it's real, and one has to, you know, think about sports people, you know, once they've walked away from the game. I mean, the news often reveals some former sports person who dies at 39 of a heart attack in a hotel room, you know, somewhere, and so on. So the despair is built into the preconditions of what one is measuring, you know, what the measuring stick of valuation for human life and the body and the mind is all about. And if it's smashing your, you know, football helmet and so on, that's all well and good until, as an older person, oh yeah, just thinking of that, a case of reform that Joe Namath saw himself on television, drunk and disorderly, and you know, turn things around. And epiphany means that one can actually fire and wire, migrate a whole field of firing and wiring at once, so that one realigns one's firing and wiring, and the old firing and wiring is simply eclipsed by the new energy inspired in terms of any epiphany. And life should really be a continuous, day-to-day, slowly unfolding epiphany, so that one can escape the biases that are built into the culture. And one of these biases is certainly this bias about sports. And I'm not, you know, trying to belittle sports, because I would be, you know, I would be like many of the people who are quarantined in a world where the whole panorama of sports, unlimited TSN coverages, has now become zero. And that manifests itself in anxiety, but in temperament upheaval. So we have to be careful about this white elephant in the room. The coronavirus is making us stay inside. The raging fires of certain mindsets have to create a transition, fire and wire somewhere else, create a new perspective, a new area in neural mapping, and in a progressive sense evolve, because that's what it's all about. You know, here's the pressure coming from outside, and maybe it's a little bit like, you know, my hernia that made me do some positive things because of it. And here we have the coronavirus. Here's the opportunity to change the culture, to, you know, address the insufficiencies in terms of true human value, so that old sports you know, like in Sparta or the Olympics, the Spartans would have to kill themselves if they lost. And yeah, some people would be horribly treated if they lost an Olympic match. So and I think of the guy coming into the boxing match on you know, the Airborne, and people beating the hell out of him. There's a rage factor in terms of, that's why two urbanites can cut each other off in traffic and get their tire irons out and try to beat each other to death, and may succeed. And that, you know, all that trigger element is something that we have to address somehow. And I think sports channels have to really, you know, take the initiative here, rather than just giving reruns, which are just going to, you know, try to pacify the psyche. This is, you know, what sports is all about is what can happen in the last, you know, after the 2-minute whistle. Here we go into unprecedented territory. Here we go into minds that are twisted into apparitions that then attack the self in terms of attention span and so on. Okay, number 2.